In this lesson, what we're going to be learning about is trigonometry and the trigonometric ratios, sine, cosine, and tangent. So this is going to be a brief introduction to these three things. All right, in this lesson, we're going to develop an understanding of sine, cosine, and tangent. So in order to do that, you need to be able to know the terms sine, cos, tan, or sine, cosine, and tangent. They're the same words, these are just abbreviations. And then you need to be able to know the fraction or the ratio that accompanies each one of these three things. And then you need to be able to substitute different values for each one of these ratios. So the first thing that's really important to know is that sine, cosine, and tangent are kind of like these special tools or ratios or whatever you want to call it that we use to help us find unknown side lengths and unknown angles in right angle triangles. But we use each one of these three things depending on the context, depending on the situation. So we use sine when we have an opposite and a hypotenuse. So if you think back to our last lesson, these words relate to the different sides in a triangle, okay? Now we use cosine when we have an adjacent and a hypotenuse. And we use tangent when we have an opposite and an adjacent. Now it's really important that you write it like that: opposite over hypotenuse, adjacent over hypotenuse, and opposite over adjacent, because that will affect your information. So a way that we can do this in shorthand is we have sine is for O over H, cos is for A over H, and tan is for O over A, okay? And there's an even easier way that we can remember all that, and that is called so, ka, toa. Now this might not be making much sense at this point in time, but I can assure you it will make sense as we go along and we do some examples, okay? So ka, toa is like your fail-safe way of remembering this, because it stands for S for sine, O, H. Okay, so sine goes with O and H. Cos goes with A and H. Cos goes with A and H. And tan goes with O and A. Tan goes with O and A. So those are the ratios that we need to know in order to do the next task. So as I've already said, we can use this form of trigonometry to work out unknown sides and unknown angles. Now today we're not actually going to be working out any unknown sides and angles. The focus is just deciding which ratio we need to use. So if I want to try and figure out what ratio I need to use, the first thing I need to do is label my sides. So labeling our sides means I'm going to have an O, an A, and an H. Okay, O for opposite, A for adjacent, and H for hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is the one that we can always do first because it's going to be across from the right angle. So this is going to be my H. Then I've got a side that's close and I've got a side that's far. So the side that's close is going to become my adjacent, and the side that's far is going to be my opposite. So in this question, I have an A that's labelled and I have an H that's labelled. So if I think back to so, ka, and toa, I know that I have an A and an H. So that means I need to use cos. So the option I'm going to make this time is cos of an angle is going to be A over H, and cos of this angle is going to be 8 over 10 because A is 8. So I've changed A to 8 and I've changed H to 10, H to 10. And so I have filled out my, I've chosen the right ratio and I've filled out the right numbers. All right, for this next one, we've got an angle here and we've got two sides labelled. The first thing we need to do is label our sides O, A and H. So the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. So I'm going to make this one H. Then I've got a side that's close and a side that's far. So the side that's close is going to be A. The side that's far is going to be O. All right, now I need to decide which ratio I'm going to use. So I can see I have an H and I have an O. So I'm going to write here, so ka, toa. If I've got an H and an O, this one has an H and an O, so I'm going to pick this one. S stands for sine. So sine of an angle, as in this angle, is going to be O over H. Then I can substitute. I'm going to change O to 12. And I'm going to change H to 14. Okay, and now I've found my ratio. All right, this is the last example that we're going to do. So we've got our triangle here. We've got two sides labelled. So the first thing I need to do is label my sides O, A and H. So I turn this into a right angle. It points over here. Sorry, I turn my right angle into an arrow and it points over there. So that means it's H. Then I've got a side that's close and a side that's far. The side that's close is going to be my adjacent. The side that's far is going to be my opposite. So the sides I need are A and O. So I'm going to write so, ka, toa. If I know I need an O and an A, that tells me I need this one. T stands for tan. So tan of an angle is going to be O over A. If you can't remember, it's whatever comes first in this. So then tan of an angle is going to change O to 5, A to 3, and now I've found my ratio. So if we think back to our success criteria and our learning intention, we wanted to try and understand, or we wanted to be able to label the sides O, A and H, and then we wanted to have an understanding of what sine, cos and tan meant, and we wanted to be able to determine which one we needed to use depending on the angle. So if you can label the sides, determine which ratio you need to use, and substitute in the values, then you've met today's success criteria.